What if I told you that the greatest financial disaster in human history isn't the 1929 market crash? It isn't the 2008 mortgage crisis. It isn't even a war, because the real catastrophe is already happening silently right now. As you watch this video, every second, every minute, every hour, the world is sinking deeper into a financial black hole worth more than $400 trillion. A black hole made of broken promises, a black hole made of aging populations, a black hole made of retirement checks that don't actually exist. And yet, almost no one is talking about it. Governments know, banks know, economists know, but the public, they're being told, don't worry, your pension is secure. But is it? Today, we're going to expose the truth about the global pension crisis, a financial time bomb so large that if it detonates, it could make every previous recession look like a minor glitch. So stay until the end, because what you hear today may change how you see your job, your country, and your future. To understand how we got here, we need to go back to the beginning. The modern pension system was born in the late 1800s, when a man named Otto von Bismarck, the Chancellor of Imperial Germany, created the world's first national retirement plan. He promised workers that if they spent their lives working for the state would take care of them in old age. It was visionary. It was revolutionary. And it became the blueprint for pension systems all over the world. But there was a catch, a detail that seemed small, but would become catastrophic. Bismarck set the retirement age at 70. Back then, the average life expectancy in Germany was about 45. In other words, most people never lived long enough to collect a pension. It was a brilliant political trick. It looked generous. It felt humane, but it didn't cost much. This system spread everywhere, to Europe, to America, even to developing nations. Governments fell in love with the idea, promise big benefits now, deal with the costs later. But here's the problem. Something changed. Something no one planned for. People started living longer. In 1900, the average American lived to 47. Today, it's around 79. In Japan, 84. That means the math that pension systems were built on, the math that said most workers want to collect for long, is now completely broken. We have millions of retirees collecting benefits not for 2 or 3 years but for 20, 30, even 40 years. The world didn't prepare for this. And now, the bill is coming due. For decades, governments assumed 2 things would always be true. 1. There would always be more young workers than old retirees. 2. The economy would always grow fast enough to pay for pensions. But both assumptions turned out to be wrong. Let's break it down, because number 1, demographic collapse today. In almost every developed nation, birth rates are below replacement. Japan, South Korea, Italy, Spain, China, Canada, the United Kingdom, even the United States is now approaching this point. In simple terms, there aren't enough young people to fund the pensions of older generations. Imagine a pyramid. At the bottom, a large number of young workers. Their taxes support the smaller group of retirees at the top. That system worked for a while. But today, the pyramid has flipped. Fewer workers, more retirees. The math doesn't add up. Because number 2, underfunded promises. In the United States alone, state and local pension systems are trillions of dollars short of what they owe. Countries like Greece, Italy, Portugal, Argentina have already faced near collapse because of pension obligations. And globally, the gap between what pension systems owe and what they actually have is estimated at $400 trillion. To put that into perspective, that's more than the GDP of the entire planet. That's more than the value of all global stock markets combined. That's more debt than the world could ever repay, even if we liquidated every asset. This isn't a crisis. This is an impossibility. Cause number 3, the illusion of safe investments. Pensions were designed with the assumption that markets would grow forever at roughly 7% per year. But interest rates collapsed. Markets became volatile. Bond yields fell to historic lows. In other words, the math pensions depend on is outdated. Pension funds are struggling to grow, struggling to survive, and many are turning to high-risk investments just to keep up. It's like giving someone who's drowning a heavier anchor. After World War II, something happened that made pensions look invincible. The economy surged. Birth rates exploded. Millions of young workers flooded labor markets, and governments made promises they thought they could always keep. In the United States, for example, the baby boomers became the engine that drove the system. A huge working population funding a small retired one. Everyone paid and everyone expected to collect eventually. But no one asked the most important question. What happens when the baby boomers retire? We are living that answer right now. Every single day, 10,000 boomers retire in America alone. Across the world, the fastest growing age group is people aged 80 and above. This is not sustainable. Soon, the number of retirees will surpass the number of workers, and when that happens, the system breaks. So how close are we to the breaking point? What happens when a pension fund runs out of money? Do governments print more? Do taxes rise? Do benefits get cut? Or does the entire financial system collapse? In the next 1,000 words, we'll trace the tipping points already happening the countries closest to pension bankruptcy, and the signs to watch for that the crash has begun, because the truth is, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. We often think financial disasters happen suddenly, a crash, a collapse, a single moment in time. But pension crises don't happen like that. They happen slowly. And then all at once, right now, around the world, pension systems are already breaking. Not in the future, not in theory, but today. Countries, companies, and even city governments are facing the same impossible equation. More people collecting, fewer people contributing, not enough money to keep the promises. Let's look at the most alarming warning signs. In Greece, 2010 was the beginning of a nightmare. The streets filled with protesters, retirees marched with signs saying, "Where is my pension?" The Greek government admitted something unthinkable. They couldn't pay what they promised. Europe had to step in. The IMF had to step in. But bailouts came with a price. Pension cuts up to 40%, retirement age increases, benefits frozen for years. For many Greeks, the crisis never ended. Even today, their pension system operates like a wounded animal, alive, but barely. And here's the scary part. Greece is not an outlier. It is the preview. Many pension systems pretend they are stable. On paper, everything looks fine. But behind the scenes, they are using what economists call creative accounting, shifting money from one promise to pay another. It's like paying your credit card bill with another credit card. In the United States, several state pension systems are already effectively insolvent, meaning, if they had to pay out every promise they made, they would run out of money in months. States like Illinois, New Jersey, Kentucky are among the worst. If they were private companies, they would be shut down. But because they are governments, the illusion continues. For now, Japan is the oldest society in human history. For every 100 workers, Japan now has over 48 retirees. Within decades, that ratio is expected to hit 1-to-1. This is not a pension system. This is a ticking bomb. Japan has tried everything. Raising taxes, cutting benefits, selling government bonds, ultra-low interest rates, but nothing reverses the core problem. There are simply not enough young people. Today, more diapers are sold for adults than for babies in Japan. Let that sink in. A nation with more elderly than children cannot sustain a pension system. It collapses under the weight of its own past promises. And this same demographic trend is spreading to South Korea, China, Spain, Italy, Poland. This isn't a Japanese problem. It is a global pattern. So what happens when pension systems break? Not in theory. In reality, the consequences form a domino chain. Domino number 1: benefit cuts when the money runs dry. Governments have two choices: cut benefits or borrow more. Either way, retirees lose. In some countries, monthly payments have already been slashed. In others, governments simply pay late, or skip payments entirely. For someone who relies on a pension to survive, this isn't a statistic. It's the difference between eating and not eating, paying rent or becoming homeless. This is why pension crises lead to civil unrest. People feel betrayed, and they are. Domino number 2: tax bombs. To avoid cutting benefits, governments raise taxes. More payroll tax, more income tax, more corporate tax. This hurts businesses, job creation, young workers, which means fewer jobs, fewer contributors, and the pension system becomes even weaker. It's a vicious cycle. Domino number 3: market collapse. Pension funds are some of the largest investors in the world. They own huge portions of stock markets, real estate, government bonds. If a large pension fund fails, it doesn't just hurt retirees. It can trigger a market crash. We nearly saw this in 2019 in the UK. The pension system was so unstable that the Bank of England had to intervene to stop a chain reaction that could have collapsed global bond markets. One pension crisis nearly toppled the world economy. Now imagine dozens happening at once. Domino number 4, political crisis. When people lose faith in the system, they lose faith in government. This creates revolutions, radical leaders, policy whiplash, instability. History shows that pension failures often precede political collapse. The system breaks, then the society follows. Governments claim they have solutions, but let's examine them. Sounds simple, right? Work longer, retire later. But here's the issue. Many jobs aren't designed for 70-year-olds, and even if people work longer, it doesn't solve the math. Why? Because retirees are living an extra 20 to 30 years. Raising the age by 2 to 3 years doesn't fix that. Some governments think, let's bring in young workers from other countries. In theory, this helps. In practice, the numbers don't scale. You would need immigration on a level that societies can't integrate fast enough. And many countries are turning anti-immigration, not pro. This is the most dangerous. If governments print money to pay retirees, it causes inflation. Inflation destroys savings. Inflation destroys purchasing power. Inflation destroys trust. It is a silent tax on everyone. Some pension funds are gambling to survive, investing in hedge funds, private equity, speculative markets. If the bets fail, the system collapses faster. If they win, it only buys a little time. This is not a solution. It is survival mode. So now we understand the scale, the cause, and the consequences. But we still haven't answered the biggest questions. What happens next? Can this be prevented? And what can everyday people do to protect themselves? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The pension crisis isn't just numbers. It's your parents. It's your grandparents. It's you. This is not a story about finance. This is a story about the future of civilization. If nothing changes, and right now, very little is changing, the next decade is going to look very different. Economists believe that by 2030, the world will reach a point where pension systems can no longer hide their insolvency. Right now, the crisis is invisible. On paper, everything still works. Checks still arrive on the first of the month. Politicians still promise that everything is fine, but the math doesn't lie. By 2030, the number of retirees will surge to 1.4 billion people. The global worker-to-retiree ratio will fall dangerously close to 2 to 1. Pension funds in multiple countries will hit zero liquidity. This is not speculation. This is projection based on current demographics, interest rates, and funding levels. When the first major pension system collapses, the shock will ripple across borders. Markets will react, governments will panic, and ordinary people will pay the price. But the future isn't just doom. There are two paths. One leads to collapse. The other leads to transformation. Which one we take depends on what we do now. Scenario A: the great default. Governments admit the truth. We can't pay everything we promised. Benefits are reduced. Eligibility is restricted. Retirement ages pushed past 70, 75, even 80. This is the most likely scenario, and the most painful. People will work longer, retire later, and receive less. Scenario B: inflation as escape. Governments print money to keep pensions alive. This feels like a miracle solution, until the cost of living doubles, then triples. Food becomes expensive. Housing becomes unreachable. Savings evaporate like water in the sun. You get your pension check, but it buys half of what it bought last year. This is not relief. This is erosion. Scenario C: tax revolt. Younger generations already struggling with student debt, housing costs, and stagnant wages begin to refuse the burden. Movements rise, demanding lower taxes, pension reform, a reset of promises. Governments face a choice: crack down or give in. Either path leads to instability. Scenario D: radical reinvention. This is the most hopeful outcome. New models replace the old. Retirement becomes more flexible. Lifelong part-time work becomes normal. Automation supplements labor shortages. Pension systems shift to co-investment, not promises. Individuals become their own retirement planners, not just employees. This future is possible, but it requires honesty, something politicians avoid. Every major crisis in history leaves clues. In the 1920s, the US ignored signs of over-leveraged banks. In 2007, we ignored the housing bubble. Now we are ignoring a demographic bomb. Let's connect the dots. In 1950, there were 12 workers for every retiree in the US. By 2000, there were 4 workers per retiree. By 2035, the number is expected to drop to 2. In Japan, soon it will be 1 to 1. This is like trying to fill a swimming pool with a single bucket, while 2 drains are open at the bottom. The system was never designed for this. And here's the most overlooked detail. Retirement itself is a modern invention. For most of human history, people worked until they died or they physically couldn't continue. Retirement wasn't a right. It was a luxury, a product of industrial era wealth. The entire concept of retirement assumes something that is no longer true. High birth rates, fast economic growth, predictable markets today. We live in the opposite world. This is not a moral failure. This is not laziness. This is not personal weakness. This is a structural mismatch between the world we built and the world we live in now. This video is not financial advice, but information is protection. There are 3 things anyone can do, regardless of where you live. Takeaway number 1: don't rely on one system. If your future depends on a government pension, your future is at risk. This doesn't mean abandon it. It means don't make it your only plan. Multiple income streams are not a luxury anymore. They are a necessity. Takeaway number 2: learn the basics of investing. You do not need to become a professional trader. You do not need to chase risky assets. But you do need to understand inflation, compound growth, diversification, market cycles, because if you don't understand how money works, someone else will always control yours. Takeaway number 3: redefine retirement. The old model is fading. The idea of stop working forever at 65 is becoming obsolete. The future of retirement might look like part-time work, flexible income, digital skills, micro-businesses, remote consulting. Retirement isn't the end of work. It's the reinvention of work. There is still time. The pension crisis is not a meteor. It is not an unstoppable extinction event. It is a human system built by humans, which means it can be changed by humans. But change starts with something uncomfortable: admitting the truth. Politicians won't say it. Most media won't say it. Experts hint at it, but don't push too hard. So let's say it clearly. The global pension system is broken. It will not survive in its current form, and pretending otherwise only makes the fallout worse. The sooner we face this reality, the better chance we have to build something stronger. So here's the question: if retirement as we know it disappears, what replaces it? A society where people work longer? A world where automation supports us? Or something entirely different? Think about it, because the answer will define the next century. If this video opened your eyes even a little, share it. Someone you know might need to hear it. And if you want more breakdowns like this, deep dives, financial mysteries, and hidden economic truths, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell. We are just getting started. This is not the end. This is the beginning of a conversation the world is afraid to have.